So, today we are at, pretty much the last leg of Excel. The last session will really be connecting the dots. So today we're going to sort of round up and conclude where we started the whole program. When we started Enrich, we started with saying that each one of us is a school leader or the leader of a primary school or a secondary school or high school. And what are some of the qualities, what are the ways to address. So that's what we have gone through. And we have woven in to that various neuroscience concepts, whether it is about perception, whether it's about mindset, biases, and so on and so forth. When we started, this is where we, if you remember that in session 1 of Enrich, this is where we started. We talked about this particular ape who was a massive, massive ape. And this particular ape, okay, used to be on Earth, and finally it went extinct. And the reason it went extinct was it was unable to adapt. Now, in a human terms, we can't say we can't adapt. In fact, we are masters and, kind of chopping and pruning the environment around us. Right or wrong is a different question, but we've been able to manage that. But for us, it's really about our inability to evolve, which could lead to a certain amount of inflexibility, which will lead to survival, which will lead to being in status quo, which will lead to not progressing, which will lead to lack of fulfillment, and so on. That is what it is as far as we are concerned. So as leaders, we said there is a certain sense of flexibility we need to have. And the first of those flexibilities is our flexibility in cognition. Cognitive flexibility, a great example, because when we wrote about, when we presented the slide the first time around, it was more than a year back, and the entire COVID had not really kind of taken its toll, which is, and schools definitely weren't coming around to recognizing that the old approach might not work anymore. And today it is a matter of, it's seen everywhere in every school, how people are using different approaches to education itself. Incorporating different thinking strategies, different mental frameworks, and our ability to develop new solutions to a changing environment. Okay. While COVID is something which will probably exist for another year and will go off, but the new solutions we have adopted in terms of blending online, offline, and all of those things will stay for a very long period of time. Like Arthur C. Clarke says, whenever great events happen, the humankind has a tendency to always or overweight the short-term impact of that particular thing and underweight the long-term impact of it. This blended approach is going to change education very profoundly, even going forward. The second flexibility we were talking about was in terms of emotional flexibility. In emotional flexibility is about varying our approach to emotions of ourselves and of others. Being very comfortable when somebody comes complaining or grieving or resisting a certain idea. Being very comfortable when somebody gets emotional about something. Being comfortable in around people with strong emotions. Definitely not being dismissive of others' concerns, but still having the emotional stamina to be able to go ahead with a certain decision, okay, in the changed scenario. Now, cognitive flexibility and emotional flexibility is fine, but those two will not sit very well if we don't have the dispositional flexibility. Otherwise, it will be extremely stressful when we have only the cognitive and the emotional flexibility, but our ability to stay positive and optimistic about the future, okay, our general disposition to life has to be that optimistic about the future. We're not really talking about false positives. We are not talking about blind optimism, but simply not being cynical, not being defeatist, but being real and being optimistic. The other thing about disposition is to be able to, for a leader, we will never find clarity. There is one thing which is certain for a leader is we will never ever have a situation where things are crystal clear as to where they will go and what will happen. If you put something, what will be the output? We will never be clear about it. There'll be plenty of moving parts, and at best we can come up with a reasonable hypothesis of our understanding of a situation, and we have to be comfortable with that ambiguity. And therefore, we also have to look at every change which is happening to the situation around us, not as a threat or danger, but as an opportunity. So these are the three flexibilities we talked about right in the beginning: cognitive flexibility, emotional, and dispositional flexibility. Then we moved on to talk about saying, if we are a leader, what really is a leader? What role does a leader perform? What is leadership? What is that position all about? Where the first clarification is, it is not a position of power. It is a position at the top of an organization, but it's not a position of power. In the sense, it's not about generating power, we sit there. It's about doing plenty of other things, which has moved us to that particular position. What are those things? So leadership, first of all, is a quality, not a position of power. It is not about the authority and the veto and the power and the command which we have. It is about that sense of responsibility we have towards it. And that sense of responsibility so leadership is also not about commanding, it's about building trust and building cooperation. So really, this is what leadership is all about. It's a quality, not a position of power, not authority, rather a responsibility. It's not about commanding, but about building trust and cooperation. So what is that a leader does? Okay, a leader has to be three things. A leader can be many things, but three things are definitely demanded out of a leader. There are three roles a leader has to perform. If any of these three roles is not performed by a leader, then you can say this person is not a full leader. But if they perform other roles, that's entirely up to them. But these three roles are very, very critical for every leader. The first of them, and the most important of all of them, is setting the vision. Right? What is setting the vision? Setting the vision is a three-part thing. First, our ability to imagine a future. What will schools look like 8 years to 10 years from now? We are right now sitting in 2021. In 2031, what will a school look like? If you have to imagine a school which will look like more of the same, then we are probably not having the right kind of vision. Because we have to go back and ask ourselves the question, what did schools look like in 2011? What did it look like in 2001? You will see there would have been major changes which has happened, but from 2001 to 2011, from 2011 to 21, and there's no reason for us not to believe that from 2021 to 2031 will be a very, very different kind of a change. And what will that be? Imagining that future is a key element of leadership. Second, once I have an idea of what that future is, where do I want my organization to be in that particular future? Which is about situating my organization in that future and imagining a large space which is carved out for my school or my kind of an organization, carving that out and imagining where will that fit me is about the stretch goal. Okay, it has to be necessarily a stretch goal because there is plenty of research which shows that if you lowball a goal and even reach that particular goal, in absolute terms, it's better to set an unrealistic goal and reach 70% of it than setting a realistic goal and reaching 110% of it. Okay, in absolute terms, the first one is always better. Third one is about saying, okay, we know where we want to go. We know what the future is like. We know where we want to go, but how do we go and get to that particular goal? Now, this is clearly a single person responsibility, which is the leader's responsibility. Okay, committees cannot decide this. Your leadership team can be consulted on this, but you have to make this decision. Okay, we don't make this as a group decision. We make it as our decision because we need the accountability which has to go behind it after this. Second is about the alignment. Here is where the communication comes in. Here is where the consensus and all the alignment really happens, which is about clear, sincere, and articulate communication of what? The vision and the strategy. And when that vision and strategy is not exactly in line with what somebody else's personal ambitions might be, having the empathy and imagining what will that vision and strategy, how will it change their life? And that's the empathy. And to be able to listen when there is a certain amount of pushback which happens on the new strategy. The third is about the motivation, okay, which is again a critical leadership quality, which is our sincere ability to be able to, generate energy in a group and to be also give energy to a group, which is this can-do attitude and optimism and leading by example and energy. It simply means that when people are in the presence of a good leader, they will feel more energized about the situation around them, and they will feel more positive about the situation around them. Okay, that is how motivation works. So really 3 things: vision, alignment, and motivation. So these are the 3 important roles a leader performs. So in terms of a flexible leader, coming back to our earlier slide, if you have to say, cognitive flexibility is really about imagining the new future. It is about imagining reality as it is shaping up, that ambiguity and all of that. Emotional is more alignment, and dispositional is more motivation. Well, I put it as if these are neatly fitting into a box. Sometimes they don't, but leadership is like that. I mean, it's not like something where you can really put it in a box and do check. It's not a checklist. Leadership is a behavioral thing, right? I mean, so it's not a checklist, but this gives us a framework and a structure in which we can think. All right. So which really then brings us to, as far as Excel is concerned, today, what is that we're going to talk about in terms of leadership? So in Excel, we spoke about 2 large parts. One is about the neuroscience concepts, then about the 7S. In 7S, we talked about strategy, structure, staff, style, shared values, and systems, and all of those 7S's we talked about. Now we have to take some part of what we spoke about earlier, integrate it with what we have learned in Excel, and then be able to get a clearer and a deeper sense of what leadership is all about. Okay. Right. Just a couple of slides on pursuit of excellence. These are repeats, of course. Pursuit of excellence. If you talk about pursuing excellence and excellence, it's an oft-repeated thing. It's a feel-good kind of a thing, right? I mean, nobody wants to be lousy. Everybody wants to be excellent. But what is really excellence? Is excellence efficiency, which is on one side, doing things right? Or is it about having lofty ideals and having a very, very strong aspiration? To me, excellence sits somewhere in between the two. It's not about doing things right, which is efficiency really. And it is not about idealism, because idealism is a sort of it is an ideal to pursue, but it is not a goal one can reach. Right? So it sits somewhere in between. Excellence is the art of the possible in an organizational context. I'm not talking about individuals. In an organizational context, it is about the art of the possible. It's about realpolitik. Realpolitik is, how do we assemble the right stakeholders, steer the conversation in a certain way, where everybody feels comfortable in coming up with a consensus decision, and everybody feels that the decision is theirs and not yours pushed down their throat. It's that art of the possible. It is about creating that collaboration. It is about getting all the stakeholders, is at the core of pursuing excellence. Now, people are not born excellent. These are things which can be cultivated. Cultivated in 4 different domains. One of them is individual excellence, which is how do we manage ourselves and our approach to work. Then the interpersonal excellence, which is about how do we manage conflicts, how do we communicate, how do we work in a team. The third is about how do we execute, which is, do we execute it correctly? Do we execute it as per the process laid out by ourselves and by other members of our team? Do we execute it on time? Do we execute it on strategy, on budget, on time? Excellence in execution is only about it. We have to execute something which is on strategy, on budget, on time. We cannot say I'm executing the strategy even more, even better than what we imagined it to be, but it's going to take me 2 more months. No, it's about on strategy, on budget, on time is the way excellence comes through when it comes to execution. And finally, how is that we are working with our teams? How do we manage? How do we contribute to their personal lives? How do we contribute to the vision of the organization, the future of the organization? How do we align competencies of individuals with the organizational requirements? All of that falls under organization and leadership excellence. And for that, we took this a fairly effective model, which is called the McKinsey 7S model. It comes from the 1970s, which talks about the 7Ss. The starting point of all the 7Ss is really the strategic intent and strategy. And then what a structure, what a system. Strategy, structure, and systems are called the hard Ss. Skill, staff, and style are called relatively soft Ss, and the softest of all the Ss is shared values, which sits right in the center. That's the heart of an organization. All right. Now, how do we take what we spoke about earlier, which is the role of a leader, then all the flexibility and everything else, which we integrated with the role of a leader, where we said cognitive flexibility is more like the vision, the emotional flexibility is more like the alignment and all of that. So how do we now integrate the role of a leader with the 7S framework? What are the 3 roles of a leader? Vision, alignment, and motivation. Now, vision is when we are setting the vision, just focus on strategic intent. Strategic intent, again, being sometimes it's good to repeat some of these things. Strategic intent is about imagining the future, figuring out where do I see myself in the future. We are not taking into account where we are. Okay, we are just imagining the future and deciding where we want to be in that particular future. That is our point of arrival. Then we come to where is my point of departure. And between the point of departure and the point of arrival should be a gulp factor. It has to be a big, hairy, audacious goal. And that is what strategic intent is all about. Then strategy, which is also a part of vision setting. Alignment is about once we have the goal and how to go, how do I structure the people around me? How do I make it all work? What are the processes I will have? What are the kind of skills I need to develop as an organization? What are the kinds of people I need to have? And then motivation is about what kind of a style am I adopting? Okay, we can't say that, we are a fairly flat organization and you can, we are like that. And then our doors are closed all the time. I mean, we can't walk in, we can't do certain things. So then that means our, style, there is a misalignment between the walk and the talk in terms of style. So style and shared values is more about the walk and less about the talk. Okay, style is felt and shared values is felt in an organization. Of course, there is a sense, there is value in articulating it and communicating it, but it is more about the walk and less about the talk. Right. So strategic intent is like a goal, but only that it has to have the gulp factor. It has to be big, hairy, audacious goal. What's the point of view of the future? Where do we want to be in that? That will get us the point of arrival defined and the point of departure is well known. And then knowing how to go from that point of departure to point of arrival is what strategy is all about. Strategy is not about some long catch-all, beautiful sounding phrases which we can put in a slide and forget about it. It's about a pinpointed, precise idea of how am I going from this point to another. It has to be precise, it has to be measurable, and it has to have timelines in it. Then once we know this is the path we are going to travel in, you're not going to travel alone. We have to then therefore have a structure. The structure is, it outlines various activities and then how they are directed to get to a goal. Which kind of a role is going to perform that activity? We have not yet come to which person is going to do that. What kind of a role? So we imagine it saying that we will need for the, for marketing of something, we will need a business development person. We don't know who the person is, but we're imagining who the business development person is. For doing this kind of an activity, we need a team of IT professionals who will be working on that. Who are those 4 people who are going to work? We don't know, but we have an idea of it. So structuring is about that. Staffing is about the people. Okay, structuring is about saying how all the roles and the role boundaries are meshing into each other so that each of the person's roles is mutually exclusive, which means I'm not doing what the other person is doing and the other way around, but collectively exhaustive, so that we don't have too many things which are falling between stools where we say, I thought you were going to do that. And somebody else says, I thought you were going to do that, right? Then that means it's bad structuring because it's not collectively exhaustive. Good structures are all about not keeping decision-making at the top. Any structure which is centralized, where every decision is getting made by a person on top, no matter how hardworking the person is, it just simply means the person is showing lousy leadership qualities. Okay, so making decisions at the top should not happen in any organization. As much as possible, every decision should be pushed down to the lowest level at which it can be done. Fourth, keeping them simple and keeping them clean. Okay, don't have too many departments and too many things meshing into it, and this person is also this and this person is also this, and we have a committee which is working on this and also that. Too much of fuzz around this whole thing just creates bureaucracy, and honestly, bureaucracy, there is nothing more. The bureaucracy is like the cancer of an organization. And I'm not exaggerating. Okay, once an organization has got bureaucratic, okay, once an organization is about documents and procedures and processes and bureaucracy and triplicate and submission and this and that, then you're dead as an organization. Take it from me. Finally, the span of control. Just try and see what are the best way we can evolve a strategy so that the span of control is never greater than 8 people. Anything more than 8 direct reports, it's impossible to take care of your people. Even 8 is a stretch. In terms of systems and processes, all we have to now say is, think of it like a game of football. Okay, so the goal is the strategic intent. How we are going to approach, are we going to flank, are we going to go through the center, are we going to go on the right side? So all of that is a strategy. The people, the roles, different people performing different roles, and collective, the mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. Not everybody is running after the ball. There's a very specific person who's running after the ball if the ball goes on that side. However, the ball gets passed to the other side, there is somebody else who's running after the ball. Okay, if you see how football gets played in our local grounds when we are young, you will see all of us will be running around the football. Okay, all 10 of us will be running around that particular football, because every ball, all of us are equally doing it. Okay, we will see organizations also which feel like that. Okay, where everybody seems to be solving that one problem, not that everybody seems to be engaged and involved in every little problem which happens in the organization. Then the people and role, which forms the structure, and actual playing, actual execution, actual performance. The match day is about the systems and processes and everything else. Okay, that is what it is. But a systems and process, we talked about 2 things, which is the reductionist approach and the holistic approach, the system thinking and the other one. So where every good system has to do all these 3. Every good system will simplify life and release time. It has to simplify the process. It has to save time and therefore money. And it has to generate a certain greater level of control over our operations or improve our quality of our final work output. So in a school kind of a situation, what it means is teachers have more breathing space. It feels like they are not, getting rushed into doing certain activities. It has simplified those activities. When you talk about, let's say, an IT system, which is now being used for, recording our scores and everything else, we have to go back and say, before the computers existed, was life far more difficult than this? And if you feel maybe it wasn't, then this computer system hasn't really simplified our life. Okay, every good system has to simplify our life. Second, it should be able to save time and release energy for us to think, reflect, or maybe do nothing. It has to reduce the amount of money which is spent as an organization on that particular activity. Despite all that, we are able to get better control and better quality and better work performance, which in this case might mean higher pass rate or better results or whatever it is. So all good systems will have all these three qualities. So whenever you come across or plan to propose a system which actually complicates people's life, take it from me, it won't work. Even if it works because of our position and we bully it and push it down everybody's throat, it will work for 3 months and after that people will lay off. Unless people can see a saving in time or money or it simplifies their life, people will not adopt a system. And all systems have to do this. Otherwise, why bother with developing a system and putting that? Okay, so do not get into that one trap a lot of organizations and a lot of people get into, which is once we have got a hammer in our hand, the whole world look like nails. Okay, we've got one fancy system and we want to apply it anywhere and everywhere. We got the hammer and we want to bang it somewhere. It doesn't matter. We got one fancy IT department or something like that, and we want to do everything. We want to change our entire organization using some IT or something like that. Don't do it, because the moment you have a hammer, the world will look like nails and not every problem need to be solved. And if you're solving it, it has to simplify, save time, and get better quality or control. Then finally, we come to shared values, which is about, just did it last week. We don't really need to go through it. Set of common values and behavioral traits. These are not feel-good words. These are not posters on walls. These are behaviors. Okay, that's the only big thing about it. These are behaviors. So we have to behave like that. So anybody who comes into touch with an organization, like I said, the best way to find out what your shared value is, ask somebody outside and say, whenever I say this word, what comes to your mind? That is what the shared value of the organization is. Okay. And when shared value is in action, it is called the culture. The culture of an organization is nothing but the shared values in action. How does it actually exist is the culture. Okay. It's true for an organization, it's true for a family, it is true for a society, it is true for humanity at large. Okay, culture and shared values are there across the board. And in some cases, it has to be legislated. And if you don't follow that particular legislation, you go to jail and all of those things. And that is a different set of shared values as humanity. But when it comes to a family and school, we still have some rules and norms and behavioral traits. And there are 4 or 5 steps to culture, which is first about understanding what is our culture, 2 is setting up the values, 3rd is communication, and the 4th and the most important thing in implementation is walking the talk. Don't over communicate, but don't not communicate also. So when it comes to culture, don't over communicate. So don't keep telling people, we are a very honest set of people. We have always said that we want highest level of integrity in our school because we are about integrity. This school is about integrity. Don't do that. Just show integrity in everything you do. That's it. Okay. But some amount of communication is required because people understand what our shared values are. So some amount of understanding, some amount of making posters and sticking it here and there is fine, but don't make it a habit, and definitely not make it a habit of only sticking the posters. So that's pretty much as far as leadership is concerned, all the way from Enrich into Excel in terms of tying it all together. Just a few last words when it comes to leadership qualities. Leadership qualities is about setting the vision, which is about imagining the future, deciding where we want to be in the future, and deciding what is our path which we will adopt to go to that particular future. Second one, leadership is also about being resourceful. Resourceful is we should know who or which team or which group of people will help us solve this particular problem. When we are faced with a particular problem, there is a formal team which is below us, which is our reporting structure. But we should be very clear in terms of who will be the best person to solve that particular problem, or which will be the best team to solve that particular problem. It might be situated inside your school, or it could be a team which is outside of your school. It could be a spouse, it could be somebody else. To know whom to tap into for something is about resourcefulness. Third one is our ability. This is the real politic part I was talking about. Able to get people onto a table and to be able to come up with a decision and get the best out of them. Which is about the pragmatism, which is about the real politic, which is about the art of the possible. All right. So this is about the art of the possible, which we are able to collaborate with people, not expect 10 on 10 on all the 10 qualities. It will not happen, but to be able to bring all those elements together and to be able to collaborate so that we are able to go towards our vision. This is all about alignment. Resourcefulness and collaborator, all about alignment. Okay, structure and systems are the harder ways to align. These are also ways about aligning and motivating. Then it's about the dispositional thing. Okay, if we have stretch goals and we pretty much know that we can't reach that stretch goal, it will be almost impossible to keep your organization motivated without that sense of optimism, that sense of slight foolishness, which has to be there. If you're very real, you can't be a leader. There has to be a sense of foolishness about us when we are a leader. The goals which we set should feel like somewhat stupid goals or unrealistic goals when it is being set. All right. And finally, we mentioned it many, many times, which is about authenticity. Okay. It's not trying to be anybody else. We just have to be ourselves. And we have to do it in our own style, with our own values, in our own way of communication and all of that, but do it consistently so that anybody who comes into contact with us pretty much sees the same person in most situations. Okay, we're not different people to different groups, and we're not different people to different situations. But you pretty much, I mean, what you see is what you get. That's one part of authenticity. But the other part of authenticity is about, you see this person in a certain situation, another situation, another situation. It feels like the person is the same. Okay, that's another authenticity, which is about being ourselves. Okay, which is one of the easiest things to say and one of the toughest things to follow. All right, and that is where we end this.